morning everyone, and thank you for being here. First of all, I'd like to express the Actuaries Institute's appreciation to David Murray for agreeing to launch our latest white paper for Richer for Poorer. Now, given David's eminent position in the financial sector, we feel privileged that he's taken time to promote our research findings on retirement incomes, a subject close to his heart and one of the key planks of the Financial System Inquiry report to the government. The Actuaries Institute has been a long-term campaigner on the need to understand more about the impacts of our ageing population on public finances. We produced the groundbreaking Longevity Tsunami white paper a few years ago and a recent green paper on health funding, as well as making submissions to the intergenerational report and the tax white paper. Now, this latest research builds on that previous body of work and examines the likely wealth status of current and future retirees. And we think it's the first research of its nature in Australia. Now, clearly in retirement, some groups will enjoy better living standards than others. But before we set about adjusting the policy settings, we recommend that there needs to be broad political agreement on the objectives of the superannuation system and a clearer understanding of how the various elements of retirees' wealth interact with each other and the system. Now, I'm sure that David Murray will touch upon these points and provide valuable insights into the current retirement income system. David Bell is the CEO of the Actuaries Institute and will provide the background to the For Richer for Poorer paper and highlight its key findings. And Michael Rice, who's the principal of Rice Warner, the actuarial firm that undertook the research for the Institute, will be available to answer questions that you may have about the research. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me here today and for asking me to participate in the release of this important report. The Australian superannuation system is very highly regarded around the world because it differentiates us quite clearly as a country that has done more to meet unfunded superannuation liabilities than many advanced nations. This is clear in looking at the intergenerational reports over the years, but as the Financial System Inquiry report made pretty clear, we do not get enough value from the system given what we invest in it, and that needs to be fixed. And we would not want to get to a situation where Australians themselves give up on the value of their own superannuation system. In short, they have to believe in it. The Financial System Inquiry report dealt with problems of efficiency and quality of product in retirement, and we made various recommendations about those things. Essentially, we were quite concerned that the distortions in the system politicised it more than is necessary, and this caused stop-start changes to the system and added complexity to the system over the years, which only tends to reduce engagement in superannuation by Australians generally. I guess the most important issue is that it is simply not possible to deal with superannuation on a piecemeal basis. It's not possible to separate particular tax items. It's not possible to deal with superannuation without regard to the age pension and welfare system, or to deal with it without regard to what is adequate in retirement. Now, in the Financial System Inquiry, we were not mandated to deal with all of those things. That's why we took certain issues, particularly the tax issues, and made observations about them. But it's very clear that it is that we will not increase engagement and confidence in the superannuation system without a comprehensive view which takes into account all of those factors. It's also there are two other factors in our inquiry which touch on superannuation indirectly. One is the issue of advice and financial literacy. We made a very important contribution to that debate by indicating that there will always be a knowledge gap and that the way advice works has to take account of that, and we made recommendations in that regard. But of course the reason we have superannuation is that it is very difficult to engage people early in their lives, and compulsory setting aside of savings early on makes a big difference later. So there have to be incentives somewhere for trustees to start to engage people, particularly as they approach retirement. The other issue to do with tax is that there can be distortions in the way funds are allocated through the economy. And given the size of the system, which is approaching 2 trillion now, these distortions will affect the economy itself. So again, the tax system is very important if we're to have a set of instruments available to retirees to suit their personal circumstances, and at the same time have a set of instruments that can be issued by users of capital which meet their requirements. In short, we can make the whole system more efficient. So in dealing with these things, it's important to emphasise some principles. I think that the system should remain aspirational. That is, the higher the contribution one makes to value in their lives, the higher one's superannuation can be. It needs to be non-distortionary, and we pointed out the problem with distortions in the system, and it needs to be transparent. Or put another way, in dealing with superannuation, we should not use it as an instrument to deal with other issues. Since the financial system inquiry has been released, there has been very significant renewed debate in the superannuation system, including in the summit last week. And for those of us on the committee and in the Secretariat doing the financial system inquiry, this is extremely pleasing. I think it has spawned a higher level of debate. I think we have generally, we have, I suppose, called out this problem of politics and superannuation, which is for the longer term very healthy, and so that is a very good thing. So today I would like to express my thanks to the Institute of Actuaries. This is a very important body of people. I don't know how many actuaries we have in the room, but it is an extraordinarily demanding qualification to get. It's probably one of the few professional areas where you're either right or you're wrong. It's 100% or nothing. The rigour required to get these qualifications is important. One consequence of that is that the Institute of Actuaries becomes a go-to place, not just for work like this, but as you know, in many commercial contracts for dealing with arbitration, disputes, valuations and so on. So it is an important pillar of our commercial system, and for the Institute therefore to take on this work on the back of our inquiry to add value to what's going on in the superannuation system is really very valuable, and I'd like to thank them and wish the Institute well in launching this report to add to the quality of our superannuation system. Thank you very much.
Thanks, David. We'll do the dance here. Thank you very much, David, for agreeing to launch our For Richer for Poorer white paper. We're very grateful for that. particularly given your knowledge of financial services and, of course, your interest in retirement incomes. The starting point for us with this paper actually was back in 2012 when we launched a paper which dealt with the issue of longevity risk, which is the issue of people outliving their savings, which of course is a problem not only for those individuals but also for governments who have to fund the gap. This new paper, which we're launching today for the very first time, analyses a cross-section of population by age, by gender, by income and marital status, and builds an intergenerational profile of superannuation and retirement income systems. So if you like, there's a couple of ways you can tackle these issues. You can have big ideas, which are important, or you can also look at the detail and draw conclusions from the detail, and that's what we're trying to do today with this report. I will acknowledge that this paper was published by the Actuaries Institute and was done in collaboration with Rice Warner Actuaries. Of course, we've got Michael Rice here, who's one of the principals, who will be available for questions of detail. Now, in terms of the key findings of this paper, there are a number, but I'll just summarise some of them. So firstly, in the main, we believe that the superannuation system is doing what it was designed to do. In other words, it's accumulating assets to fund adequate retirement incomes and reduce dependence on the age pension. We also observe that the least wealthy sections of the community will continue to be entirely dependent on the age pension to maintain even a modest lifestyle. Superannuation, of course, will remain an important supplement to the age pension for most people. People who have started out their careers now will be marginally better off when they reach retirement because they will have worked entirely under the superannuation guarantee regime. However, there are risks associated with this group of people, which I'll talk about in just a moment. The average taxpayer subsidy paid via the age pension will reduce for future retirees because of the superannuation guarantee. As a result, even though the proportion of people who have access to age pension will not reduce significantly, the reduction in individual pension payments will partly offset the rise in the overall future costs of the age pension to taxpayers. And finally, current retirees may need to access home equity to supplement their retirement income, especially those who live beyond their life expectancy. So in terms of three, if you like, mini case studies, apart from the low income cohorts that I've mentioned, let's talk about this group called Middle Australia. Despite having more retirement income, there is a risk that Middle Australia in the future, in other words, those people around the 50th percentile wealth band that we identify in this report, could have to pay higher taxes to fund current and future retirees, which in turn reduces their capacity to save for their own retirement. This in turn could be exacerbated by the risk that they receive less social security support when they retire. In addition, they're not guaranteed the growth in property values experienced by current retirees. Another important segment, of course, is women. In the future, single women will continue to be more dependent on the age pension than men. For example, at the 50th percentile band for wealth accumulation at retirement, the age pension will account for 56% of the wealth for women, currently aged 30, and 36% for men. Single males are expected to have a retirement income of $49,000 compared to $38,000 for single females. And the question which obviously arises is whether this is an acceptable outcome both now and in the future. In terms of the wealthiest cohorts, those at the 75th wealth percentile, currently and in the future, will receive between 16 to 18% of their retirement income from the age pension over their lifetime. This raises the question as to what extent should the most wealthy retirees receive support from the taxpayer. In conclusion, the Institute has already identified policy measures to improve retirement income system. For example, increasing the preservation age, linking the age pension to increased life expectancy, a lifetime cap of $2.5 million in assets in your super fund, and removing legislative barriers to product innovation. This, of course, reinforces many of the key recommendations in the final report by the Financial Systems Inquiry, particularly its call for an overarching approach to retirement income. Importantly, this paper confirms that policymakers need to agree on what the objectives of the superannuation system should be. Once you've set your objective, all else follows. Finally, we believe that the For Richer for Poorer paper provides the fact base that will help guide the deliberations of policymakers. That concludes the presentations. I'll now open up to questions, and what I'll do is I'll start with the floor and we'll give people on the line a chance as well. So do we have any questions of anybody who has spoken so far?
I'll ask one. David, how important, one of the recommendations of your inquiry was that the Parliament legislate what superannuation is for, and that hasn't happened yet. And how important is it for that to happen as a starting point, getting the system right?
Well, we felt it was fundamental because there are so many different views about why we have the system, and you can't have clarity of policy and clarity of law without a starting objective. So we thought it's fundamental, and it's been heartening to see how many people have picked up on that since. But by having a clear legislated objective, it's harder then to keep tinkering with the system and making it more complex and having continual change. So we thought it was pretty important.
It's been nearly a year now since your report, though, and nothing's happened. Is it frustrating for you?
No. Our reputation sits with the quality of the report.
So you talked about the summit last week, and that was formed or came about because of frustration from a whole lot of parties about that nothing is happening on reform. Is your concern that you put some recommendations on the table, but the government at the moment seems to be too scared to do anything, or certainly not to tackle something in a holistic way? Are you worried about the political process at the moment, that nothing might happen? Or?
Well, there's a bit in that because the political process generally is picking off individual items rather than looking very comprehensively at this system, which is why we recommended, a single objective. I think that's the consequence of 25 years of continual growth, the consequence of a very high per capita income in the world, the consequence of a record ever terms of trade boom in Australia, and the connectedness with China and the apparent benefit we get from that. That's not an environment that is given to more brave political reform propositions. And what we have to hope is that the political process will make some adjustments itself and exercise some leadership around some reforms that will promote growth and prosperity in the new environment we're in, which will be a slower growth China, a long period of workout on commodity prices, and dealing with the particular circumstances of the Australian economy, which we outlined in our report.
So do you think there's more urgency in the sense as the economy is under more structural pressure and more global pressure, there's even more urgency perhaps to make some of these decisions? Or?
Yeah, I guess all I could say is this, clever and successful people don't wait. The long term starts today.
I might jump to the people on the telephone. Is there anyone on the phone who would like to ask a question of anyone on the panel? No. I'll come back to the room then. Is anyone in the room who'd like to ask a question of anyone?
Do you think that what you're sort of saying is most people are still going to rely on the age pension?
Correct.
And there are people who say, well, these superannuation tax concessions are generous. Do you think that it could lead to some people saying, well, what's the point of having it anyway? People are going to go on the age pension, so let's just stay with that. I just worry that there are a lot of critics of the compulsory system, and if you're saying people, and most people are going to end up on the pension anyway, some people might say, well, what is the benefits of having the system?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I might ask Michael Rice to have a go at that. Would you like to go?
Sure. We've got a real dilemma because our age pension is means tested, and so every time the SG grows or if earnings on super funds grow, that puts people into a position where some of it will later be lost. It's a bit of a trade-off, and there's certainly Middle Australia, a couple of years from retirement, could put extra money in and have quite a lot of it clawed back, particularly after the recent means test changes. But the dilemma for the government is with everybody living longer, and the age pension being the biggest cost. You know, it's 41 bill, I think, going up to 51 in 4 years' time. They need to cap that, and you can't increase the benefit for poor Australians if 80% of people are going to get a full or part pension. So it's interesting that ASFA has an objective of getting the number of people on the age pension down to about 25% in 30, I think, or 40 years' time. But that would require some quite significant changes in behaviour and probably tax as well.
Questions? Anyone on the phone would like to ask a question? I think you're keen again. Yeah, please.
David, you talked in your speech about the engagement of younger people with superannuation. What are your thoughts on the halving of the superannuation co-contribution from $1,000, or the top rate from $1,000 to $500, in terms of engaging young people, getting them self-sufficient?
Well, I don't think there was much happening anyway. We spoke to people around the world about this issue of engagement, and it's very difficult. It might work better if parents or family could transfer some of their funds to their children as they enter the workforce, and so they have some more emotional connection with the money, and it wasn't contributions taxed again. But it's anything like that we could do that would commence that engagement would be great. But it is difficult to get it going. People at that age are indestructible, and it's always been an issue. And this is why, the defined benefit pension idea was such a good one. The problem is it was many times unfunded by sponsors, and sometimes interfered with by beneficiaries or employers. So that's why with our recommendations we tried to bring back in the comprehensive income product for retirement, we tried to bring back pooling to add value to the whole system, and the numbers in our report demonstrate that it really does add value. So we're trying to find out what are the good bits out of a defined benefit system that you could replicate in some way in this system. And in industry now, there's already a lot of people starting to do new design work on product, which is great.
David, do you agree with the recommendation that the government should look at putting the family home back in the means test for the pension?
I think we'll have to. I don't see any way of solving this without looking at the way all assets are taxed, including the family home, combined with super, combined with the age pension and the welfare system. You can't solve it by taking one item, and that becomes important. But it also helps if you have these annuity-style products in retirement, particularly where you can cut them out at a later age, where the government can take over again with its longevity protection, so that you don't have to take all of the risk. But we have to have a comprehensive look at it. We can't do it piecemeal.
Would you think, what would be a figure you could start with, like 10 million, or for the value of the home, or
No idea, but
yeah.
The Henry Review recommended 1.4 million, I think, as a threshold. So anything under that would not be counted.
Right.
And Margaret,
yeah,
did you want to...
and then the Sydney property market went berserk after the Henry Review. But the reason I'm hesitant to put a number on it is that I believe that the system, we want people to aspire to a good working life and a good retirement life. And being able to do that by being skilled, being in a good job, saving, and being in a good superannuation system is important. So we don't want to kill that off. So I would always err on slightly higher numbers. But you can index them, you can do all sorts of things to help. But we have to have a comprehensive look at it.
So under the current system, it does favour, would you agree, it does favour the wealthy that can have a lot of money in their house and then have a lower money outside super and qualify for the pension? Is that's the main point?
Yes, because housing is tax advantaged, but we should remind ourselves, I think the most important piece of information in our report was the extent to which the tax benefits of superannuation are so distorted against low-income people. It's not so much about the rich, it's about the distortions against low-income people. And that's what we have to focus on. And so apart from risk pooling, another important element of good design should be some sort of capping in the superannuation system.
Michael Ross, did you want to comment at all in terms of means testing the age pension?
Yes, one of the problems is we don't have death duties in Australia, and so people there's no incentive for a retiree to downsize because they're going to usually give their tax-free to their children, who are probably then middle-aged or even retired, and in the meantime it's not counted for the age pension means test, so they benefit in two ways. And if you do want to downsize, you might lose your pension because the assets freed up are then not exempt. So those are the sort of distortions we have. So you really just want some rules that don't create behaviour that's a bit obscure. I mean, why do you want to upsize when you're retired just so you can get more pension? Some people might think of doing that.
I might invite any other final questions from the media? Are there any other? No. Any final questions from the media at all? I think we're right on the phone, are we? Are we right here on the floor?
Morning, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, who's that?
Yeah, it's Bernard Kellerman from Banking Day.
Bernard?
Thanks very much for the presentation. Here's a question. I've been trying to quickly read through the report. My question was on the actual structure of it's fine. I agree with everything you've said about the need to get people interested and so on. However, 80% of people are still in default for super funds, and I don't think the number's going to rise anytime soon. Do you think that actually the whole industry could be simplified? The whole advice industry, we've got, 300 super funds, I think. I haven't looked at it lately. I don't know if that's covered. If it is covered in the report, my apologies. But do you think one of the answers could also be to simplify the whole sector and have less fees coming out as well? Was that addressed?
That wasn't within the scope of this report, but it's certainly been widely covered. There are a lot of people that think that fees in superannuation are too high. They're over $20 billion a year if you add everything up. I don't know whether that's too much or not. I mean, it's only half the level of the banking profits in Australia, so you've got to take things in perspective. But there's no doubt that we've got too many superannuation funds, because you do get a lot of scale both in operations and investment management through size and efficiency. So bigger funds generally are better run, they're better governed, and they're more efficient. So arguably we should be trying to simplify the system. It's heavily fragmented. It's very difficult to merge funds because you've got to get people to vote themselves out of a job and they may not be culturally aligned. So I think there are a lot of issues that the government and others are still looking at in that area.
Any final questions from the media at all? I think with that we're done. Thank you very much for attending today, and thank you to our panel. Thank you.